Check out carmarshal.com. The link is in the description. They help support us.
Watch. Horrifying video shows man choking to death on vomit while police restrain him. A disturbing video has emerged about Michael Lee Marshall's final minutes in police custody. Marshall's final moments of consciousness can be seen from video that shows him choking on his own vomit as police restrained him. The incident happened after a hunger strike and a lawsuit, according to the city of Denver. The tapes unfold in 3 parts. They were shot from 2 different overhead cameras in Denver's jail. They're without audio. 44 minutes of silence. Here's what happened between 6:28 and 7:12 p.m. on November 11 in the jail's 4th floor secure Sally Port. Marshall walked down the hall shirtless, his laundry in hand. He was 50 years old, 112 pounds and homeless, a paranoid schizophrenic who had been arrested a few days earlier on a trespassing charge at a Colfax Avenue motel where he sometimes stayed. He was being held on a $100 bond. After Marshall tried putting his laundry on a shelf and then on a cart in the hall, some papers fell off the cart onto the floor. He walked down the hall, away from the camera. A sheriff's deputy walked by the fallen papers and toward Marshall. Marshall headed back toward the camera, dragging on the floor what looks like a blanket. Out of it fell several small, unidentifiable items, within full sight of the deputy. Marshall paced back and forth, stopped to pick something up, then paced more. He kept dragging his blanket and then dropped what looks like a shirt. He sat on a bench, and several more small items fell out of the blanket he was clutching. He bent down to gather them from the floor. A tall, stocky sheriff's deputy stepped into the frame and stood watching Marshall, who collected his belongings and held them tightly to his chest. A second deputy walked by, and a third approached so that 2 deputies were standing on each side of where Marshall was seated. Both were notably larger than he and both stood for a while, holding their belts, watching him. Marshall adjusted his sagging pants, then stood up, blanket in hand, and tried walking between one of the deputies and the wall in an attempt to get past him. The deputy reached out, pinned Marshall to the cement block, then swung him back toward the bench. 2 other deputies approached and swung Marshall to the floor where the 3 officers seemed easily to restrain him. A 4th officer walked up and stood over the others as they held Marshall to the floor apparently without much physical effort for about 4 minutes. A view of Marshall himself is hidden from the camera until the deputies dragged him a bit more into the frame. There's a quick glimpse of his leg, unmoving. Several deputies leaned and stood over him for several minutes. At this point, it's unclear from the video if they were restraining him, giving him medical care, or both. During this time, a few lights seem to have flashed out of the camera's view. A few minutes later, Marshall's foot moves and a deputy leans in to hold it still. At one point, 13 minutes into the video, at least 5 uniformed officers and 3 staffers who appear to be medical personnel were leaning over Marshall. The medics then stepped away, leaving 5 deputies still restraining Marshall on the floor. They appear to have used some force because the deputy harnessing Marshall's foot or feet kept wiping sweat from his brow. 17 minutes into the video, a deputy approached from down the hall with what looks like the cloth spit hood that, according to the autopsy, was placed over Marshall's mouth. About 18 minutes in, the crew of deputies lifted Marshall into a restraining chair and out of view of the first camera. The second camera shows that deputies spent about 3 minutes strapping Marshall's seemingly limp shoulders and arms into the chair while as many as 10 uniformed officers surrounded him. Marshall sat lifeless in the chair for about 5 minutes while the deputies, for the most part, stood around and watched. Finally, a deputy shook Marshall's chest in what looked like an attempt to wake him. A medic apparently found Marshall had no pulse. Deputies started unstrapping Marshall from the chair slowly at first and then faster, as if for the first time deeming it a medical emergency. The medics removed the spit hood from Marshall's face and wiped what likely was the vomit his autopsy report indicates he choked on. He was lowered to the floor. A deputy performed CPR on Marshall on and off for about 20 minutes until he was lifted up, still limp. He was taken out of the camera's view and the video ends. What we know, beyond the videotape, is that Marshall was taken to Denver Health Medical Center, where he was brain dead for 9 days before his family ended life support on November 20th. What we also know is that Denver's coroner earlier this month deemed his death a homicide. Denver District Attorney Mitch Morrissey's office announced today that it's not pressing criminal charges in the case, ending the criminal investigation the city cited in refusing for 2 months to release the videotapes. Their release today puts an end to a 10-day hunger strike by members of Marshall's family, several black pastors and other clergy, members of Denver's faith community and civil rights activists. Strikers told The Independent this evening that although their hunger for food has ended, their hunger for justice in Marshall's case has just begun. His family is considering a civil rights lawsuit against the city. Their legal team is the same that represented the family of Marvin Booker, another mentally ill homeless man who was killed in 2010 when several sheriff's deputies restrained him, much like Marshall in the city jail. As with the deputies in Marshall's case, none of those who killed Booker were criminally charged. Still, federal jurors found them to have been liable for Booker's death and awarded Booker's family an unprecedented $6 million jury award. Despite today's release of the Marshall videotapes, over which the Colorado Independent sued Mayor Michael Hancock's administration yesterday, many questions about the case remain. It's unclear why deputies restrained Marshall on the ground for so long and then, even though he seemed to present no physical threat, strapped his limp body into a restraint chair and stood around for several minutes rather than rushing him to the hospital. Also in question is whether those deputies will keep their jobs under an administration that has promised to set straight its wayward sheriff's department, yet seemingly has failed to enact meaningful reforms. Watch video, courtesy of the Denver Post, below.
County. This is Charlotte County Cop Watch, and I wanted to explain what fair use is. You can use pieces of news articles if you're doing it for news reporting, you have commentary, and you're doing it for education purposes. So that's what fair use is, as you can see right here. Another reason why I wanted to make this video is to let you know I have just joined with Patreon. A nice thing with Patreon, I make no money on YouTube. They took the money away years ago, and so this is another way to give, and it's a nice thing too because you can give monthly. You can give $1, $5, $10, whatever. I do 4 to 5 hours a day on trying to wake the sheeple up on how corrupt it is and different ways that you can fight the corruption. So Patreon is a way that you can do it, and then of course the old way is still there. Donate to Charlotte County Cop Watch with PayPal or credit card. So keep that in mind. 4 to 5 hours a day. I make no money, but the corruption happened to me and I'm sick of it, so I'm trying to wake people up. But my wife would love it if if we could get some help out there. There's 47,000 subscribers. Just think if each one of you subscribers just gave let's say actually yes, $1 a month. 47,000 subscribers gave $1 a month. That would be awesome. That's not going to happen. But anyways, that would be great if it did happen. But do the math in your head. Just think about it. Like I said, 4 to 5 hours a day. I get no money from YouTube. YouTube has gone nuts. You can't do anything anymore. They're taking the money away everywhere. So these are a couple different ways that you can still help out with all this time that I put in. And as you know, I'm in a special situation where, at least I can do it. 4 to 5 hours a day. We have a cleaning company during the day. That's what allows me to do this, and we're debt free. So this is my hobby. I don't go fishing and all that other crap. I try to save the world. So help me out to make the wife happy, man. In fact, if you guys did give $1 a day, and there was 47,000 of you, and you did it, and each of you gave $1, and that was every month, oh my God, yes, I could quit. I could start suing them. Another idea too that we have is, if I got, some funds, we could actually contact everyone that has been ticketed and or arrested and put in jail and start sending them postcards to let them know we're here, and to see if everything went all right, and if it didn't, find out their story. So we could even do more investigations and more lawsuits. Lawsuits take money. So just think about that. 47,000 of you so far right now. $1 a day. $1 a month on Patreon, or $5 a month Patreon, 10, 20, whatever. Just do the math in your head. Help out. This is a lot of work every single day. Thanks.